Let's talk a little bit about pacing. What tips do you have for authors that are looking to increase their pace?
I usually try to find, I mean, there's a few different things. I think what one of the harder things for me is I tend to a little bit more, and I've tried to adjust this as I started writing. Sometimes I'll do a little bit of a long introduction. So in the way I usually have in my mind, there's a few things. I watch a lot of movies as well, and sometimes I kind of think of how can I make the book kind of play like a movie in your mind, and that's kind of one of my favorite things to say when I go to classrooms is the great thing about book is if you're doing it the right way and there's enough detail and description, it's almost like you're inside the book, and that's something I think kids can relate to. But in my mind, I'm usually kind of thinking one of the movie series that I enjoy a lot over the years is some of the like James Bond or something. And what in the beginning of James Bond, before the intro sequence, there's always some big exciting scene, that happens, and that kind of gets you into it. So that's one. Most of the books I do try to have a kind of something happening right away, and then that's kind of the wow, it gets your attention, and then kind of slowly get into what's the mystery going to be, and then kind of getting a few nuggets there. And then I always try to make the last third of the book very exciting. So I think having an exciting ending that kids can kind of have pulling them through and keep them reading, that's important, I think, to try to get the pacing there. So if I find that my heart is beating and I'm typing really fast, that's always a good sign. And I talk to kids a lot about doing rough drafts and not trying to make them perfect as you go through. And I think a lot of writers have that same problem is they keep going back and they don't finish. And I find the more I can type quickly and start making even just some shorthand notations as I'm typing and not worry about every little detail. And if I'm in a really big action scene and something's happening quickly, I may just not even start writing full sentences just to get the ideas down and maintain that sense of excitement and action. I think that's really important to kind of have that fast pace going. So that's some of the techniques that I use just to kind of get it going. And then you can go back and clean it up. I say to kids all the time, there's a reason I'm a writer and not like a concert pianist up on stage talking to you, because if I really mess something up in a song, you tell right away it would sound terrible, you cover your ears, and you wouldn't want me to keep playing. But I make mistakes all the time in my books, but you don't see them, most hopefully, because the writing process is so great that you can go back, all the editing and revising and everything. But I think getting those initial tracks down and that sense of excitement and kind of drama that way, for me, it is important. And again, going back to like what I said of, if I'm really excited about it, I think that 9 times out of 10, it's going to bleed through on the page to the reader. So those are some of the things.
Well, obviously, I'm only ever doing one draft because I'm taking divine dictation, but I'm fascinated about how other writers work.
Right, yeah.
I wish. So how long does that initial draft take, especially if you're not even writing full sentences, just to get through it?
If on a good draft, I usually can get the first draft done in a month, depending on how much, depending on how much my schedule that's changed over the years as I've started doing it full time. Sometimes it'll be 2 months, depending on how much research I had to do or how much I'm really kind of slogging through it at a particular time. But that's usually about that month or two of getting the story down. And I'll go back, once I'm really into the first third of the book, then I have usually once I get into it, I'm set. That very beginning part for me is the hardest part, to try to see exactly where it's going to go. And the more that I've written, the more I still pants a lot, but I plan things out more now than I used to, because I've found that while you still want it to be exciting and imaginative and kind of surprise you along the way, there is a lot of benefits to planning out where the story could go, and it helps me, I found, have a little bit more complicated and interesting plot line. If you can say, at the very least, here are some of the landmarks along the way that you want to hit, and you may change a little bit the way you're going to get there, but this is generally some of the big ideas, and you might come up with some new ones as you go, but that's helpful to kind of plan it out a little bit more.
So you're not doing like a Jeffrey Deaver 7-8 page, I think 20-page outline that tells you exactly what's going to happen every chapter?
No, I cannot do. I don't have that much preparation patience, I think. So I do. I'll have usually I do a lot of my planning actually by hand. I'm a pretty fast. I say one of the best classes I took in high school was a typing class, so I can type pretty fast. But I still do my planning for the most part by hand in a notebook, just because it helps me. And I might make some little boxes to say, okay, this is going to happen, and it goes from here to here to here, just to map out, storyboard it a little bit, just with some really crude, scribbles. But it helps me give a sense of, okay, this is logically where it's going to go in my mind, so that when I sit down to write it, I kind of generally know what's going to happen, and then just kind of go from there.
Do you know your ending?
I usually know generally what's going to happen. So I think I know I want it to be exciting. I generally kind of know, okay, there's going to be this big chase, and the bad guy or whatever's going to happen is going to kind of have this happen to them, and they're gonna have it in this particular location, and it'll kind of be dark, and they have to hide over here, things like that. But then exactly how you get there, that's sometimes I'll figure that as I go. But I think that's one of those 6 or 7 major landmarks that I know I'm going to get to, and the ending is usually figured out ahead of time.
And how often does it happen that the characters change the ending for you?
It has happened. That's one of the reasons. After I do 2 or 3 drafts, I usually have either my wife or one of my kids read a draft, or sometimes someone from a critique group or something, but usually one of my family members. And there's been a couple times where, again, one of my goals is to have it be exciting. And I've had one of the Brother Wars books, for example, I had it ended a few chapters before where it ends in the final version. And I got some feedback that, okay, this is a little bit less than exciting compared to what I'm used to reading so I'm like, okay, it's good. Sometimes you just can't quite see it. It seemed exciting to me, but okay, what could I do to amp it up a little bit and go above and beyond just to keep somebody even more excited? And that's good feedback to have. So that's probably the kinds of changes that I'll make. Sometimes just increasing the stakes a little bit more than maybe I had before.